Hello, how are you all, my brothers and sisters? Again, I am giving you a couple of brief talks for this evening and your next Leader School meeting next week. On this evening, we'll talk about the three times or stages of the Cursillos and Christianity movement and the role of Palanca in all of those three stages or phases of Cursillo. But first, let us talk a little bit about the history. As most of you know, Cursillo was born in the post-Civil War Spain and began with a pilgrimage that was inspired by Pope Pius XII call to have the laity take its place, its rightful place in the church. The Pope's thinking, of course, at this time was specifically because of what was happening with World War II and everything else, and the need that the laity had to begin to do that which is the call of every baptized Christian to be a missionary disciple of Christ. And so in Spain, the Catholic Youth in Action, or Catholic Action, the youth branch, organized a pilgrimage to Compostela, which had been, throughout the Middle Ages, one of the most popular, most visited shrines in all of Europe. And indeed, to this day, it continues because of all this, the movie and every rebirth about El Camino. But El Camino to Compostela was a way in which the Spanish Catholic Action youth section of it saw as a way of gathering together through its organizing, Father Mr. Parisi in those times, and then all of the various branches. In preparation for Compostela, they began to have week-long retreats and preparations so that they would come with a whole series of questions and reflections already gone and preparing for this great big effort. And Compostela was an absolute success. The young people came back all filled with fire and all excited about what route to follow in the post-pilgrimage experience. And of course, the leader from Mallorca was Eduardo Bonin, who never was particularly fond of Catholic Action because he saw it as just one way, or limiting a way in which the laity might be involved. And it involved a certain amount in his mind of institutionalizing the laity within the whole structure of the church, rather than being the ferment for Christian living and for the gospel in the world in general. But nevertheless, he was quite an inspiration, quite the leader in his very quiet way. He was not a terribly dynamic speaker, and he was not a powerful or necessarily even eloquent speaker. But he was, all the same, someone who could draw you in because of his profound faith, because maybe he wouldn't have all of the qualities that others might have, who would be far more eloquent, but he was a true leader. And all his contemporaries and younger men and women really greatly admired him. And in that context, with the leaders that had gone to Compostela, he said, after Compostela, what? What are we going to do? How is this going to happen? And in that context of what we call a study of the environment was that Cursillo was born. Many of the talks and reflections that were given in preparation for the pilgrimage were valuable. And indeed, some of them, merely the titles of what we call today the rollos, is what remains. The content was essentially rewritten as those early leaders shared with me personally, actually. He was really the inspiration, the brains behind all of these talks that we have to this day in Cursillo, and which encapsulate everything that we believe as Catholic Christians. But he saw also the need to do it in such a way that it wouldn't take a week-long retreat, but that could be accessible to not just one class or category of Christians. He hated those tags. He wanted the persons to be merely dealt with as a person, a human being, irrespective of social, economic class, of whether you're a laborer, whether you're a farmer, an attorney, an engineer, whatever way of life. You were not just a role or a profession or a job. You were a human being. And at that level, you could relate to other human beings. And because most human beings, most people worked, they figured that a weekend experience would be it. And all that study of the environment, which is an essential element to this day of Cursillo, because we don't want to take Cursillo or go to a place without first coming to know that community, that person specifically, that we recognize is a leader and whom we want to make them a leader for Christ and for his church. And so in this whole process of discernment, of reflection, Cursillo was born. And in 1944, the Cursillo movement, as we know it now, with very few changes, was created. Not 49, which is somehow the official figure. That was the date. That was the official date, because that was the date that the Bishop of Mallorca formally encouraged and approved. But obviously it already existed. If you approve something, it already exists. And so he gave it recognition, and not only recognition, he saw the enthusiasm, the ferment that this had created in young people who were just alive and excited about their faith. Even then, quite unusual, especially in a time where already the effects of modernism and other secularizing trends in society, especially after the horrible experience of a civil war in Spain, also of the deep fractionalism that there exists between the different regions of Spain, Mallorca being one of those, kind of on the periphery. Because Mallorcans were, kind of part of the whole Catalonia or Catalan province. And so who spoke their own language, not Castilian Spanish, which was the official tongue or language of the nation. So in that diverse, in that sometimes conflicting and conflictive environment, is that Cursillo is born and acquires what we call those three phases of Cursillo. It came from the very experience and from that these young men, particularly as led by Eduardo Bonin, had gone through, but also what they had experienced in their workplace, in their families, in society as a whole. And so Cursillo was born with these three phases that we call pre-Cursillo, Cursillo, and post-Cursillo. Pre-Cursillo would be obviously the time of preparation where you work the ground, where you work the methods and the means that are characteristic of pre-Cursillo to bring other people, other men and women to Christ. The Cursillo would be that experience, that powerful 3-day experience that was a means to an end. The 3 days were a means to the end of creating men and women who are true evangelizers, not out in Africa or some far distant place, but right there where they are, in their families, in their workplaces, with their friends. And then the post-Cursillo. How do you keep this alive? How do, as Eduardo used to say, how do you extend indefinitely into the future until they come to the fifth day? How do you do that on the fourth day? And the fourth day was to be somehow an experience similar to those 3 days, extending indefinitely for the rest of the life of that person who had made their Cursillo weekend, that into the rest of their life, their fourth day, until they arrived at their fifth day, as in Cursillo we refer to being with the Lord and being in heaven. And so in that context, we have those 3 phases fully developed by 1944. And the royals themselves, the talks, fully developed. But we need to go and look at what that pre-Cursillo, Cursillo, and post-Cursillo phases are. And the very important element that binds it all together, what we call palanca, prayer and sacrifice. Without this, there is no pre-Cursillo, there is no Cursillo, and there is no post-Cursillo. That is at the heart of the Cursillos in Christianity movement, and is what makes possible what happened on the weekends and what continues to happen and be promoted throughout that fourth day in the post-Cursillo. So, in the pre-Cursillo, we talked last time that one of the primary tools at the heart of Cursillo is the whole notion that the most effective means of evangelization, the way in that you can reach the heart of the person and the best of who they are as a person, as a human being, is friendship. That through friendship, which in some way emulates, replicates, if you will, the friendship that God our Father has shown us in Jesus Christ, that through that friendship you can touch the lives of people who become convinced about the truths of the gospel, who convinced about that truth become committed to it. They commit their lives to Christ and to his church. And through that commitment, which continues a process of conversion throughout their lives, they serve. They serve God's people. Not necessarily within some intra-ecclesial ministry or apostolate. I always have shared with you that, the church becomes for us what it always has been from our baptism, our second family. And in my family, if there are floors to sweep, lawns to mow, dishes to wash, I help. And that's what we do in the church with these ministries. But if I see Cursillo as a way of feeding parish ministries, I've got it all wrong. So let's start with pre-Cursillo. In that period of time is when I come to identify individuals who are leaders, not because they're eloquent speakers, not because they're in charge of anything, not because they are necessarily, the head of some ministry or some structure, whether political, religious, economic. No. I look at that person who might be, a little grandmother who has taken on the role of parent for her grandkids, who is the spiritual inspiration and the human inspiration for them. And I see, wow, okay, this grandmother, this mother, She has single-handedly seen these kids through school, through professions, and she has a powerful influence on them. That guy there on the machine floor of the factory, he's not very educated. He is not one of the foremen. But boy, do the guys look up to him. And when they're in trouble, seek advice. Sometimes he doesn't give the best advice because he doesn't fully know Christ yet. And you say, wow, what a Christian leaven he would be for Christ. And so I seek these individuals out to become a friend, not to manipulate them, not to use them, not to have them fill out some form so that they can apply and go to a weekend experience, not because I have to meet X number of places for the weekend. Unfortunately, that's what we have made Pre-Cursillo into, but Pre-Cursillo is all about being a friend and loving my friends. And along the line, I may realize, hey, he or she doesn't really need a weekend. They've got it all together way before I ever did. I needed a slap in the face like Cursillo to wake up. But these people are just fine. And if I take it, maybe because it might help them, give them some ideas how they might reach out and evangelize those people whom they touch and whom they influence. But it is all about accompanying them. Becoming a true, sincere friend and allowing them to recognize their own gifts and talents and to want to learn more about Christ and His church. And because they admire you, they respect you, they have become close to you, you don't even have to ask them. Say, hey, why are you this way? What led you to be this way? To be so kind, and patient, forgiving, to be so generous with your time, to sit here and listen to my silly babble. Sometimes when I'm upset or had an argument with a wife or a husband, when you say, you know, one thing that helped me was Cursillo, it might help you too. Making that weekend. But most of all, walking the walk and living the life that I am called to as a Christian. All this Cursillista stuff always irks me because we are first and foremost a Catholic Christian. And a Cursillo weekend should make us not Cursillistas, but committed Christians who live and breathe the gospel, who talk the talk and walk the walk, who live that gospel every day, and who sometimes fail, sometimes slip and fall, sometimes find it difficult and challenging to remain faithful to that gospel, but have found the tools and journey not alone, but with others, so that I may persevere, and more than persevere, grow, because I know I'm never alone, that I have Christ with me, that I have my brothers and sisters with me, and that even if they're not physically there, I know I can count on them and on prayer. And so during Pre-Cursillo, the first and foremost, before, Eduardo used to say, before talking to men about God, talk to God about men. First of all, get on your knees and pray for this person that you know is going through difficulties. Not because you're thinking of them as a candidate for Cursillo weekend even, but because you want to be a true friend for them, and the only way you can be a friend to them is to pray incessantly to God that the Lord might help them through whatever it is they're going through. that they may break through whatever barriers they have, whatever traumas or experiences they had, and come to the end and know that they are loved unconditionally by God. And you show that unconditional love to them, not by preaching at them, not by trying to have them go to a weekend so that it does your job for you. Because our job as Christians is to be one another's brothers and sisters and best friends. And so Cursillo is first and foremost not a time to catch somebody and drag him to weekend so that somehow at the weekend he may have that experience, that triple encounter, which is typical of the 3-day weekend, and which is the goal of that weekend. But that triple encounter has as its purpose that the person truly become a committed Christian. And this commitment comes only out of a complete personal conviction that God loves me. If they get nothing else out of the weekend, if they can't remember a single idea of all of those various talks, and they can be overwhelming, and they may sound pretty at the moment they're being given, but after about a couple of hours, you ask them and they probably won't remember. That's why we have them write, review during the weekend, and share. But they will remember not what you said, as Maya Angelou said once. They may not long remember what you said or what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. They will remember how God made them feel during that weekend. And in moments of darkness later on, they will get back to that as the benchmark. The reminder that, okay, I would be a liar if I denied what I felt and what I experienced, the sense of the Spirit at work in me and those around me. And so I'm going to hang on to the Lord. I'm going to hang on to my brothers and sisters and extend indefinitely for the rest of my life that 3-day experience, so that it doesn't become an isolated, beautiful retreat that is put away and along with other memorabilia, but a real life-changing and transforming experience. It helps me to know that God loves me unconditionally and that I am never alone, that I always have Him, and that I always have my brothers and sisters with me. The Cursillo prepares the way through our friendship, through our presence, through our commitment to our brethren. We'll talk more in the next session. God bless you.